and welcome back to the Travel Mug podcast. So many of us, and like myself included, feel like our best selves when we're traveling. And like, it's so nice to feel disconnected from like the stress and the monotony of our everyday lives. And I often come home wondering how I can kind of translate that into my everyday life, and I feel like that maybe happens for, like, a couple of weeks, and then you kind of, like, slide back into some old habits for sure. And, like, for a lot of us, travel is only a really small percentage of our time, but living in the moment shouldn't only happen after we've hopped on a plane. So today we are chatting with Kat Medina. She is an entrepreneur, adventurer, public speaker, and author of The Joys of Jet Lag: How to Use a Traveler's Mindset to Not Be an A-Hole in Daily Life, which I have right here. Of course, I've finished it recently. Welcome to the show, Kat. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah. So, of course, we have to start with what started your love for travel. I always love hearing people's kind of travel origin stories.
Yeah. So it's hard to say if it's nature or nurture, but my mom tells this story that when I was 3, I asked, like, when she asked what I wanted for my birthday, apparently I said I wanted a piggy bank that was also a globe. So if that's some sort of foreshadowing. But I grew up just wanting to be this explorer. When I was a kid, I wanted to be MacGyver when I grew up, who also traveled the world and explored. And that's what I daydreamt about instead of getting married and having kids and stuff. I just wanted to see the world. And then when I was 17, I participated in a study abroad program in France for 6 months. So it was my first solo trip and to a place where I didn't speak the language, and that's really what like, I think the travel bug was there all along, but that's when it was like, "There's no turning back from here because it was so challenging, but it made me feel alive, and after that, I was hooked.
What was your biggest lesson from that 6 months at 17 years old that maybe you didn't expect going into that?
There were a lot. One was I attended a French high school when I was there, and I realized that world history changes depending on the country that you're learning it in. And so just learning, a different perspective on the United States and other countries. And basically, for the most part, you could say that when you're learning world history, in whatever country you're in, that's the protagonist for the most part. And so kind of being awakened to that can change depending on where you are. And also that there's a different way to live a life. And it's not that it's the right or wrong way. It's just different. And there's more than one way to go through it. So that realization was really huge. I think it gave me a lot of empathy and also just going through with that challenge where I didn't know a soul and leaving there with this whole new life created, friendships that I still maintain, more than I think like 20 years later. It just gave me a lot of trust in myself that I can do really hard things. And even if they're uncomfortable, it's on the other side of that learning curve and growth that I feel the most alive.
And that's really interesting too, because 17 is really young to have those like big life lessons. And so that's really incredible. I spent a month in France by myself when I was 28, and that was scary enough going over there, not knowing anybody. But I can't imagine at 17. But it sounds like we've sort of both had some pivotal time in France. So that's interesting. Now, how did that love of travel turn into a mindset for your life? So, was it a gradual transition for you, or one day you were like, wow, everything I've learned from traveling can be used for living, or most things, or some things? Like, how did that sort of happen?
It was gradual and abrupt, both, like so many things. Like for most of my life, I feel like I've been two different people. When I traveled, I was my best self, like you were saying. I've lived in multiple countries, Ecuador, Argentina, France, and Spain, and traveled pretty extensively. And I noticed that whenever I was abroad, joy was effortless. And also this knowing like that I was exactly where I was meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to be doing. And it just felt like I naturally embodied the characteristics that I was most proud of without an effort. And then I'd return home and all of those feelings, especially the feeling that I was doing what I was meant to be doing, they just evaporate. And I was like filled with doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Because I don't feel like I'm living fully here. And so I, like most of us, try to control the uncontrollable. I'd get frustrated when things didn't go as planned. And probably the worst stuff, I'd stop appreciating the simple things like clean drinking water or hot shower, even though I knew firsthand just how rare those things were in so many parts of the world and so many places I'd been. And so I'd focus on the next trip and start planning, working, going through the motions so that I could feel fully alive again. And then one day I realized that as much as I prioritize traveling, I still spend most of my time at home. And it felt like such a waste to spend my days wishing I was somewhere else instead of enjoying where I was. So a couple of years ago, I made it my mission to try to bridge the gap between my best self, my travel self, and who I was at home. And what I realized is it all came down to mindset, a traveler's mindset, because when I was abroad, that person, that mindset was effortless. So that was a huge win, knowing I already somehow knew how to be that person. It was just a matter of looking at those characteristics and applying them to daily life instead of just when I was abroad. And by taking that effort and getting really clear on the differences in behavior and attitude and perspective, I was able to tap into that joy, that mindset, no matter where I was.
Oh, that's awesome. And so, how did it turn into the joys of jet lag? Like, how did you decide, oh, I should write a book?
Well, I felt like even though out of my most of my friends, I was kind of the outlier, the person who lived to travel. But when you're abroad, you meet those people everywhere you look. And so I knew I wasn't alone in this. And I felt like, okay, I'm going to write about this in hopes of providing people with simple but impactful strategies that they can use on the day to day to experience more joy, awe, adventure, instead of just when they're on vacation. And most of us in the United States only get like a couple weeks of vacation each year. And even if you're not like a person who's a digital nomad or someone who prioritizes traveling during that short amount of time that you're on vacation, everyone knows that feeling when it's like everything just melts away and you're able to be spontaneous and patient and outgoing and get to know people and be curious. And so I felt like this book would provide people with tools to tap into that regardless of whether they're standing in line at a Trader Joe's or whatever grocery store or watching the sunrise over the mountains of Nepal.
Right. Right. I would honestly take either because we don't have Trader Joe's here. So I would 100% take the line if I had to. Like, I just to be really honest. I love Trader Joe's. And we do live in a fast-paced world with, unfortunately, a lot of the time, constant access to news and distractions. One of the big themes in your book is mindfulness, gratitude, and slowing down. I think that's even so much more important now as the world sort of goes in the direction it's going in. So, how have you been able to adopt this in your everyday life as an entrepreneur and parent and just being busy in general?
So, some of the things that have helped me most is trying to break free from autopilot. Like in the book, I call it asshole autopilot. And it's when we just do what our brains are intended to do. And that means look out for anything dangerous and ignore everything else. And it's great for staying alive, but horrible for being present. So I try to force myself out of that and notice whenever I fall into that habit of like too much routine, getting too caught up in my schedule to be able to pause and have a random conversation with a stranger, a non creepy one, of course. That's important.
Those
But
are best, yes.
Yeah.
yeah, um, I think that, you know, giving yourself space from efficiency and slowing down, like you said, I think that I used to try to rush through all of my have tos so that I could get to the want tos. And right now I have a 1 year old and a 3 year old, and I want to spend time with them, but there's so much to do. So I try to be like, this multitasking machine, get through it as fast as possible so that I can enjoy the moment. And I noticed that like 80% of my time, my day is filled with have tos. And that's just the way of life. And so that means I'm rushing through like 80% of my life. So, how can I tap into presence and tap into a traveler's mindset on the things that I don't enjoy? Like an example, I hate putting on duvet covers. It drives me nuts. Like tying the things and buttoning it. It's just like a
It's
task.
unrealistic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's awful. And you can't really be efficient at it. I've gotten as close as possible, but I had to like just a few weeks ago, my son had like a stomach bug, the youngest, and I was holding him on the bed and he like threw up all over like me, my phone, my Kindle, worst off, the duvet cover. So I had to
Oh,
wash it.
God.
And it was just sitting in a pile. And I'm normally a person who does laundry like immediately just to get it done with. That one sat there. And I was like, 4 days in, I'm like, all right, enough is enough. I'm putting this thing on. And my boys were playing like in the same room as me. And instead of rushing through it, I just kind of like noticed. Basically the best way to be present is tap into your five senses, what we learn in kindergarten. So I was like, oh, what do I smell, see, hear, feel? And I felt like the fabric, the softness of the duvet cover, and didn't rush it. I listened to my boys playing, and it felt effortless, and it also felt like a key that I was missing, because I just think so much of life is made up of those moments, and when you try to get through it as fast as possible to get to the good stuff, you end up missing the good stuff.
Yeah.
Mm.
Something you said there about, in regards to those are the senses and being alive is one thing, but living is a different thing. And how do you incorporate that into actually living your life instead of just going through your life on autopilot and routine? And I think that, those little moments that you just mentioned with the duvet cover are sort of like canon events almost in terms of, wow, this is such a simple task or lots of simple, but it's an everyday task or a household chore that you take the moment to really, get into or reflect upon. So that's really beautiful, actually. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also one of the things, from your book is sort of the idea of this, like, morning power hour and how you can kind of use your morning to set you up for the rest of the day, and that's something that I've been thinking about a lot too as, obviously, like, there's a lot going on online, and there's a lot of big feelings about what's going on online, and that I'm consuming that, like, it literally immediately after waking up, like, laying in bed and scrolling, and it's like, "Okay, I actually love laying in bed and scrolling, but maybe I should scroll something else." So, like, read a book, like, grab my, Kobo instead of, my phone and that sort of thing. So that's definitely something that I've taken from your book and have started to incorporate into my life so that I'm not just filling my brain with doom and gloom, like, 2 seconds after waking up.
Mhm.
One of the things I also want to mention from your book that I love is this sort of recap at the end of the chapters with the takeaways, the jet lag toolkit, and sort of like bringing together everything that you've said in that chapter and sort of like reiterating it. I think that's a really good feature of your book and also a good way to, if you own the book, to go back and remind yourself of how you can actually cultivate the traveler's mindset because sometimes you're just like, "Yeah, yeah, okay, yes, I should be more grateful," but, like, how? And, making sure you use those, tools as well.
That's a selfish feature because I need the reminder as much as any of us. It's like, what did I write about? Oh, yeah, back into that.
It might be selfish, but obviously it's a share for the rest of us as well. So
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
Selfish, but not.
Yeah. You know what? In what you were saying, Jen, like, I've been grappling with that too, with like so much negativity that is bombarding us, and it all feels really urgent and
Mhm.
really important.
Yeah.
And it's just this really tough, fine line of balancing staying informed and also like protecting your mental peace and
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I'm like trying to figure that out right now. What I've been trying to do is I have really limited the amount of time that I spend getting that information. And I know that if it's really, really pressing, my friends are keeping me informed too. If I
Someone will tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will find out about it, but I it's tough because I'm kind of in a bubble. I'm in this small mountain town. Outside there's like beautiful woods and a river right down the way, and it's very peaceful and calm at the moment. Like we do struggle with wildfires, which can be scary, but right now the sun is shining and there's birds chirping and it's peaceful. And so in being present when I read these things that really terrify me for the current and future state of my country and the world. What does this mean for my boys? Like, it's scary. And yet I look out the window and right now everything's fine. So, like, informing and then trying to be present in what's right in front of me. And I know that this is a privilege because right now what's right in front of me is all right. It's okay. But I find that that's helped me to not get too drained too quickly and fall into despair. And the other thing that helped is recognizing what I can do in this stage of my life. Like right now, it's kind of all hands on deck in toddlerhood of how much time, energy, and attention I can give to any one thing. And so like, I feel like at this stage in my life, the way for me to make an impact isn't necessarily through, you know, trying to run for office or maybe doing marches or organizing big things. It's just, it's not feasible for where I'm at. And so I have to look at, well, what can I do right now? What's calling to me? Because what calls to you is where you'll find energy too, not what should I be doing. And so, just an example is the other day I reached out to like all of my mom friends that I know here and was like, "Hey, like, would you guys want to meet up once a month and we chat just concerns about climate, but also like current future state of the country and the world, where we can share our concerns, our resources, our anxieties, and some good news. Like end it with something good that we noticed so that yes, we have that space to vent our fears and angers, but that it also ends on a note that hopefully energizes us and lets us know like we're not alone in this and there is hope. And kind of tapping into that has been helpful. And it's all I can do right now is connect with others. And I don't know. I figure like each person has their own thing. That's been what's helping me right now.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really good advice is that, at one person, we can't change everything, obviously, but we can change something, even if it's just a little thing. But yeah, I think that's really important to realize. And I want to talk about too in your book, like we've said, a lot of people are kind of like existing in our everyday lives, but part of your book is like dreaming bigger, dreaming for more. And I think a lot of people are like, I don't even know how to do that. Like, how do I even start daring for more? So, how did that kind of process kind of work for you?
It started for me with just like, I used to have a pretty regular journaling habit, and that's kind of shifted the last couple of years, finding time for it.
Hmm.
But what I did is just create space to be free from distractions, which is actually harder than most people realize this day and age. Like usually there's always something podcast, audiobook, news, and even music, there's always something. And or the people that were around us. I feel like the only time nowadays that we aren't getting like our attention grabbed at is maybe when we're in the shower. Like not even the toilet is safe anymore. Really go to decompress and more with a friend. But I just creating space for you to let your thoughts go and daydream and imagine what could be possible, it's so helpful. I know a lot of us now, because we're so used to the instant gratification of a lot of like social media or whatever, it feels really boring. And what I'd known from growing up when I did, being born in the 80s, like before internet and when boredom was very prominent, is that just on the other side of boredom is where creativity, curiosity, wonder and imagination all live. And you have to prioritize that space because otherwise it'll never come to light. And so journaling is huge, to write down just anything you want out of life and try not to limit yourself. A lot of us try to mute it. I don't know, maybe for fear of disappointment or seeming silly that you want something so big. But when you do that, then you just make it even bigger and kind of rid yourself of the limitations that you're just creating in your own mind.
Yeah, I was born in '76, so I'm Gen X, and I miss being bored. I really I miss and I miss not having anything to do and therefore having to get out and find something to do rather than just picking up my phone or turning on Netflix or whatever the case may be. So as a kid, much like I believe yourself as well, I sported a mullet too.
Yeah.
And I I distinctly remember when I knew it was time to grow my hair out. Like, it is a canon event of my own is when I was like, this isn't right anymore." Um, and I also loved MacGyver. Richard Dean Anderson was everything. So talk to us, much like you were actually sort of just touching on as well, talk to us about how resourcefulness in particular has benefited your overall well-being and ability to have joy. I think you can probably touch a lot of people with this answer because I think finding joy and all the things we've talked about that might be swirling around us is very key right now.
Mhm. So a lot of it started just when I was a kid. My parents got divorced when I was 3, and then it was like chaos ensued. From that time until I was 18, I moved 20 times. And a lot of it was because of my mom, attracting the wrong guys and us having to do fresh starts. But some of the homes that I went every other week between my dad's house and my mom's house. And like my dad's house was usually more consistent, but he ran his own business. So he was rarely there. And I would just spend afternoons, evenings, nighttime alone, usually with my dog, wandering the woods behind my house. And then at my mom's house, it would change. It was just constantly moving. At times we were living in like rat infested trailers, or at one point in sixth grade, we were between homes and living in a tent on the beach. And luckily I was an adventurous kid. And so I kind of thrived in it, but as I get older, I've kind of put down the rose colored glasses, and now I see some of the things that I adopted to survive as a kid, I've outgrown, and now they're kind of damaging. And so it's like addressing that, like this hyper independence. This stage in my life, I'm now learning like asking for help is brave, and like connection is key. Like I know I can get through it alone, but I don't want to anymore. And as a result of this kind of chaotic, crazy, at times very scary upbringing, um, I tapped into my imagination and did have to do some fast thinking. There was a lot of luck involved in different situations, like that actually let me get through them. But it it forced me to level up, and as much as I am still dealing with some of the effects of it, um, overall, like I wouldn't change it because it, I think that fed that desire to see the world. And also gave me the confidence to go anywhere by myself, anywhere in the world, and know that I will do it. And I used to joke that I was more comfortable outside of my comfort zone. And I really think that the more time we spend outside of our comfort zone, the more rich and deep our life will be.
Mhm. I love that. Um, so like I don't know if we've mentioned, but you've traveled to more than 35 countries. Are you able to pick a favorite or maybe like top 3?
It's such a hard
It's so
question.
I know,
But I
I know.
have I've learned an answer that helps me. So I'm going to choose a
Okay.
continent.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
South America is way up there, and that's one of those places I feel like everyone has a spot that they've always dreamed of going, and that when I was a kid, it was South America, and so I did do a solo trip there to Ecuador and Argentina and traveled pretty extensively while I was there, and it exceeded all expectations, just the people, the food, the nature, it has it all. So that's gonna be up there. New Zealand, if we're choosing an individual country. I did a 3-week road trip for my honeymoon with my husband, exploring both islands, and it's like the most consistently beautiful country I've ever seen. Like
Hmm.
driving and driving, and it's like, oh my gosh, look at that, look at that, look at that. There were no armpits in the country that we could see. It's stunning. And then I'll do number 3. Um, mm, I think Nepal is up there right now. I did a lot of hiking when I was there, and super hospitable, kind people and stunning, stunning nature.
Mhm.
Awesome. I want to ask you about the Northern Island in New Zealand because we follow a YouTuber and he's from Willits, California. So he grew up in Northern California and all throughout California itself, because his parents were also split. So he lived in a couple of different places, including Oregon. And he said that the North Island reminded him so much of the landscape in California. Did you find the same thing?
Yeah, there were parts of it there that I was like, "My gosh, this is just like where I grew up." And actually one of the places that I lived with my mom, one of the not so, like, great houses was in Willits, so I'm familiar
Oh,
with that.
wow. Oh, wow. What a small
Familiar.
world.
But actually, like, we found out there's this city there that we stayed at, I believe it was called Rotorua, and they have
Yep.
redwood trees, and it's the only other spot in this is what they told me, that anywhere else in the world besides California that has those coastal redwoods. So it is
Wow.
very similar,
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Interesting.
that's very interesting indeed.
but California definitely has some armpits, like
Yes.
There is a difference.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, New Zealand's been high on our list for a couple of years, and we've just been a little bit intimidated by the flight and then taking enough time off to really be able to enjoy the time there because it is quite far from the east of coast of Canada. So, yeah, we need enough time to make that journey worth it because it does take like 27 hours or
Yeah.
something to get there from here. So, hopefully I'll get there soon, but, not this year for sure. I also wanted to ask, do you have any travel tips for someone that is maybe new to travel or wanting to get more into exploring?
Um, okay, my first one is kind of unconventional. It's to bring and use a travel journal. And
Mhm.
before that trip to France when I was 17, I didn't have one packed, but my best friend at the time gave me a blank journal, and she kickstarted this incredible habit where from my first day landing in France, anytime I go on a trip, I write every single day, like no excuses. Even if it's just a couple minutes, that's better than nothing, saying what you did. And now I have like this huge stack of journals, and they're one of my most prized possessions besides my passport. And they helped me to write my book and just hold so many memories and
Mhm.
details that I know I would have forgotten. So
Mhm.
even if you're not a writer, it doesn't have to be poetic or beautiful. Just write down what you did because it's something that you'll look back on and you can kind of pair it with the pictures that you take. So it makes it a really cohesive like tool to remember your trip.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big travel journal person. My husband gave me a travel journal as part of our I think it was like our first Christmas gift when we were together, and it's something that we use all the time. And yeah, I definitely like look back on it because you do forget things. Like you think that you're going to remember all of the details, and you just can't, apparently.
No,
Yeah.
you
And it's
definitely
fun
can't.
too, like, I would even write down, like, a typical lunch and the cost and seeing, like, visiting these countries years later to see how it changed. It's just
Mm.
fascinating. And I started, like, several years ago, I one of my friends and I, we would go she was my travel buddy. We'd always go on trips together, and she happened to be a photographer. And, oh, man, if you can find a friend who's good to travel with, who's a photographer and journal keeper, it's, like,
That's
amazing.
cool.
Yeah. Best friend ever,
Yeah.
actually.
Right? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, the statement I wanted to sort of, you know, we talk about, and I know that we sort of talked about daring for more, but I want to understand where your actual statement of silence, doubt, and pursue the daring life you were born to live. So I guess I want to just delve into that a little bit deeper. I know you touched on it, but where do you think people should even before, start daring? I guess what's the kicking off point for them before we let you go? I really want to like circle back to that and understand sort of what that means from your perspective.
Mhm. So, a lot of it has to do with creating that space free from distraction to be able to listen to whatever you want to call it, your inner voice or your heart or your gut or your intuition, to be able to listen to what it has to say. Um, a good question to kind of prompt this is what would I do if I wasn't afraid? What would I do if people's judgments were at the forefront? What would I do if should wasn't weighing on my decision? And just listening to that. And I think that for me, like so much of my life when I was younger, I wanted to make my parents proud, make my dad proud of me. And so I tried to do things in alignment with the expectations, yes, that he had, but also probably more so the expectations I thought he had for me. And there were a handful of times in my life before I started living this way more intentionally where I did listen and it changed my life. And I think like an example is I graduated college with a business degree in the heart of the recession. It was 2009, and I got a job, and then that company went under. And then I was just thinking things through, and I was like, I want to go to South America. I had never been at that point. And I couldn't ignore it. It was like the volume was being cranked up inside me. And I was like, I should find a different job. I should do this. I should use my degree. What would my dad say? What would everyone say? But then I was like, I have to go. And like, I was my then boyfriend, now husband, I was telling him about this, and I found a way to go solo. And that brought on a lot of judgments from a few number of people like, she's in a committed relationship. How could she do this? There's
The
something wrong.
nerves.
Oh, it's like we've been together for 20 years now. And it's like, it may not be the way most people do it, but I couldn't deny what was going on. And so I tried to let go of that doubt and listen and act on it, and it changed my life. And that's what's happened with so many of these decisions that seem to be opposite of status quo or what the expectations are, what you should do with this life. And when I, you know, grow some ovaries and do it, um, they're tougher than balls. You may.
Yeah. We all know
Right.
that.
Yeah. But I just think like you gotta like it's like that Mary Oliver poem that ends about like what will you do with this one wild and precious life of yours? It really, will you live it the way you think you should with the expectations you have for yourself or you think others have for you? Or will you listen to that tiny voice inside you that is persistent but quiet, that's trying to guide you to what you're meant to be doing?
Yeah. What a
Hmm.
perfect
I think that yeah, perfect way to end the
it
episode, I
is.
think.
That's
I
like
like kind of
a goosebump moment. Thank you so much. I knew I was recircling back. I knew I was doing it for a reason. And I think what you just said too could apply to travel, but obviously, much like the focus of your work, could apply to just life in general. So, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you.
awesome. Before we let you go, where can people find you online and order your book?
My website's katmedina.com. It's cat with a K. I have a monthly newsletter about finding joy in the day to day, short and sweet. And I'm on Instagram at Kat Medina Writer. And then my book is available where you can find books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I highly recommend bookshop.org, which directs you to independent bookstores. Or you can just go into your local indie bookstore and request it if it's not already there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kat, for coming on.
Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Our
Good.
pleasure. So we will make sure there are links in the show notes to your website and social media as well, just so people know that they can find you. As for us, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Travel Mug Podcast and our website, travelmugpodcast.com, where you can also find our downloadable packing list and more. Again, Kat, thank you. This has been inspiring. And until next time, everyone, bye.
Bye.